dropping down to the truth of who I am. I am dropping down, surrendering in love. I am dropping down to the truth of who I am. I am dropping down, surrendering in love. I am dropping down to the truth of who I am. I am dropping down, surrendering in love.
I know that it's one divine intelligence being all. I know that there is one source of all life, a divine idea held within the seed, picturing itself in all. I know that this divine intelligence is omnipresent, always making itself known as its creations, as its expressions. So while it continues to express its beauty and its abundance, I know that I am also its divine idea, its expression. So I allow it to have its way with me. I allow the beauty of it to be seen as my expression. I allow its abundance to be known as a human experience. I allow it to flow easily and effortlessly from the invisible to the visible. I allow it to have its way with me, to be known, to flow easily and effortlessly through me, as me. This is my agreement. I am grateful for this knowledge. I am grateful for the opportunity to be in this space called the Calgary Center for Spiritual Living, to be joined with like-minded co-creators in expressing the joy of the divine. I know it is so, and I release it into universal law, knowing that my truth goes forth as my word and always comes back to me, multiplied, pressed down and overflowing, and together we affirm. And so it is.
Would you breathe with me, please? Take it in and release. Breathe again and let it go. And one more time, deep in. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the power of meditating together. And I agree. That's why we love having our meditation here earlier at 9:45. We come together and meditate together. But there is also something that happens when we breathe together. Kind of a collective breath. Would you agree? Yes. Yeah. So last week we began a series on this book called The Four Agreements. I know a lot of you were here. It's written by Miguel Ruiz. And as a child, Don Miguel was schooled. He was taught by his mother and his grandfather about the ancient Toltec wisdom of Mexico and Central America. He later on became a medical doctor, so went the whole Western medicine bit. And then he had a near-death experience. And what happened after he had that experience is he realized that his true calling was actually more of a holistic healer and a teacher. So he wrote this book, The Four Agreements, in 1997. It was over 20 years ago. And what I have found since I've been studying it again is that it is every bit as relevant today as it was 21 years ago. In fact, maybe even more so, as we're delving into people buying into agreements that don't necessarily serve us. And what has happened with this book, how many of you are rereading it now? I know a lot of you have told me that. We also have copies of the book in the bookstore if you want it. So this book gives some very valuable insight about how we were raised, how what we call race consciousness, in our teaching we call it race consciousness or race belief, doesn't have anything to do with the color of our skin, has to do with the collective agreements that we have agreed to as a race of people. Don Miguel calls it he calls it a society's dream or the illusion. But what he says is that this collective dream or this collective consciousness that we have has affected us and our lives. And he tells us and he explains why, is that as children we were taught how to think and how to act according to the beliefs and according to the habits of our parents, of society, of the country that we grew up with, in the neighborhoods that we grew up with. I said last week there's a difference between people who grew up in Calgary and people who grew up in Edmonton. Yes? There's a difference between people who grew up in the south of Calgary versus the north of Calgary. This is what we're talking about. These are some of the agreements we're talking about. But what happens is that these beliefs become part of our lives because as little children we agree to them. We agree to them. We don't know any better. We believe what people tell us. So, okay, yeah, that's true. The challenge is that those beliefs, those agreements oftentimes are in error. They aren't the truth. So many of the things that we learned as little kids that we've agreed to and we brought with us into adulthood are based on someone else's mistaken beliefs, which were based on someone else's mistaken beliefs, which were based on someone else's mistaken beliefs. You see how this works, right? These are the agreements he talks about. So the example that I used last week, and I use it often when I talk about this, is the belief that cold weather makes us sick. Cold weather doesn't make us sick. Germs make us sick, up for debate. But our parents and the media and television commercials and it's cold and flu season and the internet and I was at my doctor this week and she asked me if I wanted a flu shot or if I'd had my flu shot and I said no. Do you want one? I'll give it to you right now. And I said no. I don't care for that. That's not my agreement. I don't agree with that. But so we're told all this, right? And then we don't know any better. We agree to it. So when it starts to get cold outside, we brace ourselves to become sick. Is this making sense? Yeah. Making sense, okay. So that's just a small example of what I'm talking about with the agreements that we come up with. So this book, The Four Agreements, is about choosing and adhering to new agreements in our lives. Don Miguel says that there are actually only 4 agreements that will drastically change our lives if we adopt them. Only 4 of them. And you know, this is our teaching. Our teaching is that as intelligent expressions of God, we can change what it is that we believe. We can change what we agree to. That's basic science of mind. And as we change our thinking, as we change our agreements, as we change the way we look at life, our experiences change. If you come to the Discover classes, come to our classes if you want to learn more about that. It's basic science of mind. So now we're going to talk about the first agreement. Are you ready for it? Yeah. Be impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. Now, to some of us, this one is a no-brainer, right? We are people of integrity. We strive to do what we say and say what we mean and all that other stuff. So we think that we are being absolutely impeccable. It's not always easy to do, but we strive to be impeccable. Raise your hand if you're agreeing with me on this. Really, only half of you. The rest of you just don't care. So speaking of keeping our word, I have a story to tell you. I've understood that this is a true story. These two men were stranded on a deserted island. And the first man says, oh my God, we're going to die here on this deserted island. Nobody's going to find us. And the second man says, trust me, they're going to find us. And the first man says, oh, don't you understand? We're on a deserted island. We're never going to get out of here. And the second man says, trust me on this one. They are going to find us. And the first man says, you are delusional. You don't understand our dire situation. And the second man says, no, you don't understand the situation. He says, I'm a very wealthy man. I tithe to my church. Trust me, my pastor is going to find me. He was a man of integrity, and his pastor was going to make sure that he stuck to it. So Don Miguel actually has a different definition of the word impeccable and what it means to be impeccable with your word. He tells us that because our word is used to create, we must be impeccable in how we use it. You know this in the Christian Bible. It says, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Therefore, when we speak, when we think, we are utilizing the creative power of the all and everything. Just let that sink in for a minute. Anytime we say, I am, and say something after that, we are invoking the Word of God. John Miguel Ruiz put it this way: the Word is a force. It is the power you have to express and communicate, to think, and thereby to create the events in your life. But like a sword with two edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream, or your word can destroy everything around you. So that's what he's talking about when he says be impeccable with your word. In other words, be very conscious, very aware of your thoughts, because your thoughts are creative. This is interesting. One of the definitions for the word impeccable, one of the dictionary definitions, is without sin. Now, of course, in this teaching, we don't believe in sin, thank you, God. We do not believe in sin because we don't use that word a lot. You only hear me talk about it when I'm doing this talk, right? We don't use the word sin because sin is actually not like, oh God, you know, I looked at somebody wrong or something like that. Sin is actually an archery term from the ancient Aramaic, which was the language that Jesus spoke in the time. And to sin means that you miss the mark. Yeah. And what happens when we miss the mark, when we miss our target, if we are a good archer? Hopefully we correct our aim. Yes? Because if we don't, if we continue to use exactly the same aim, we continue missing the mark and we continue to have experiences that are not serving us. Or in fact, Ernest Holmes said we are not punished for our sins, but by them. I know! So if we're having an experience that we don't like, or that is harming us in some way, we need to correct our aim. We need to become impeccable with our word, with our thoughts, and our actions. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to make the same mistakes and continue to reap the same effects. Anybody have a repeating pattern in your life? Well, again, only half of you. But that's how powerful our word is. That's how powerful our word is. That's why we must be impeccable, flawless. We must be without sin by constantly choosing and correcting our word when it is in error. Here's how Don Miguel put it. Being impeccable with your word is the correct use of your energy. It means to use your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself and others. Did you listen to that song that Amy sang? Are you saying a prayer to build people up? Are you saying using your word to help people, to comfort people, to help them through those times? Because if you don't, you are not being impeccable. Because our word is so incredibly powerful. Not only in our own lives, but in the lives of others. Don Miguel uses two very profound examples in this chapter about how powerful the word can be and how it can harm others. One person did it on purpose, and one person did it by accident. But the impact and the harm that came from it was the same on different scales. When Adolf Hitler came into power, all he had was his word. All he had. He was a powerful speaker. He was a dynamic speaker. And with his word, he was able to stir people up, an entire population of people, stir them up with hate and with violence. Because he didn't have an army when he started. He didn't have a group of advisors. He didn't have the mandate of the people. All he had was his word. He played on people's insecurities and their fears. He reminded them of long ago agreements of discontent and of prejudice. And people have always wondered, how did it happen? How was he able to influence an entire generation of people, the people of Germany, to such a degree? Well, Don Miguel writes this: the human mind is like a fertile ground where seeds are continually being planted. The seeds are opinions, ideas, and concepts. You plant a seed, a thought, and it grows. So what he's saying is that every human mind is fertile, but it is fertile only for the kind of seeds that it is prepared for. So if you go back to thinking about what was happening in Hitler's time, back in the 30s, you had people who were still recovering from World War I, which is the war to end all wars, from my mouth to God's ear. Their economy was in shambles because of the depression that was all over the globe. And they wanted to blame somebody. So their minds were prepared for the seeds that Hitler was planting. Seeds of hatred and prejudice and fear. So what does that tell us about how we prepare the soil of our minds? It tells us that as thinking, choosing, conscious people, we need to always be vigilant of how we are tending the soil of our minds. We need to be impeccable about what we let in and how we are preparing our soil, what we are allowing into it. We need to be conscious of what we agree to. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Emerson, one of my favorites, said this: "The wide universe is full of good, but no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till." That's Emerson. We could spend a whole week on that phrase. But what he is saying is that our minds, our powerfully creative minds, are tilled and cultivated by the tendency that our thoughts are taking, the direction of our thoughts. So if we think and we talk about ain't it awful and it ain't fair and all those things, those awful seeds are going to be implanted into the soil, and because the soil is ripe for the poor me's, the victimhood, that those seeds take root and grow. Thank you. Thank you. The good news is, if we are tilling and we are nourishing the ground with tendencies for good, for love, for fairness, for impeccability. Is that a word? Just made it up, okay. But if we are working, if we are tilling that soil so that it is fertile for those kinds of seeds, then only good can come in and only good can flourish. The other good news about this is that if we are tilling for good, if we are doing our work and we're tilling for good, then when we have those little stray thoughts of negativity, maybe you don't have them, I have them every once in a while, those seeds fall, but they cannot take root because the ground is not tilled for that kind of seed. So I'm going to tell you the other story, because you all know the Hitler story. This is about children. It's about children's soil that's implanted. Because Don Miguel tells a story. I actually kind of relate to this story. It gets me a little teary. It's a story about a mother and her daughter. And the mother adored her daughter. Very happy, joyful kid. And one night, Mom came home from work and she was tired. And she was discouraged. She'd had a bad day and all she wanted was some peace and quiet. Anybody relate? No. But her daughter was so happy to see her. And she's dancing and she's prancing around and she's singing joyfully. And Mom got so frustrated. And she yelled at her daughter, "Be quiet. You have an ugly voice and I don't want to hear it. Just be quiet." Well, Mom didn't think her daughter had an ugly voice. She was tired, she had a headache. She used her word thoughtlessly, carelessly, unconsciously, unimpeccably. But the little girl believed her because she had no other frame of reference, so she agreed to it. And after that, she didn't sing anymore. Even when she was by herself, she truly believed that she had an ugly voice and that no one should be subjected to it. She became shy and withdrawn, and her entire personality was altered because of a careless word from her mother and the little girl's agreement with it. That's why it's important to be impeccable, clean, flawless with our word, so that we can be vigilant in how we use it for ourselves and for other people. Because another way that we use our word in a very careless and destructive manner is gossip. Nobody here gossips. I know that's your boy. I can't tell you how many non-eye contacts I'm seeing right now. Don Miguel likens gossip to a computer virus. It gets implanted into a computer program, in our program, and we don't expect it, we don't know that it's happening, but once that virus is activated, our computer doesn't work quite right because it's getting all this negative and all this conflicting information, yeah? We've all had that. Well, think about that from a human mind standpoint, because our human minds are just like the hard drive of a computer. So when we engage in the virus of gossip, We are essentially inserting negative and often incorrect information into our minds and into the minds of others. As a result, our minds become poisoned by the information. And then we often respond in an incorrect manner. Here's how Don Miguel put it. One little piece of misinformation can break down communication between people, causing every person it touches to become infected and contagious to others. So I want you to just think for a minute about how you feel when you gossip. How you feel, how do you physically feel when you gossip, even if the information is titillating and good and juicy? Don't you feel yucky? Don't you feel yucky? It does feel as if you've been infected by a virus. It's incredible. So then imagine that yucky feeling going around in this never-ending chain around the world, because we're all interconnected. So when I'm gossiping and I'm passing things on that aren't true or half-true or unkind or non-impeccable, I'm sending that out into the consciousness of the world. And it's icky, especially because people like us are priding ourselves on being part of the solution of the world's problems. I know that when I gossip, and I do sometimes, I'm contributing to the very thing I'm trying to heal. Yeah. The question is, why would we do that? Why would we do that? Especially when we're working so diligently to clean up our thoughts, to clean up our experiences, and to help to make the world a better place. Why do we do that? Thank you. That's next week's talk. No, I'm just kidding. So, our agreement: be impeccable with your word. Be vigilant in what we allow into our minds. Prepare our minds to accept only seeds of love and harmony and good. Be conscious of what we say to others, because we don't know how it will affect them. And to engage in conversations that build up instead of break down. Yes?
Yes.
You agree to the first agreement?
Yes.
Say, I am impeccable with my word.
I am impeccable with my word.
Because our word is the most powerful, transformative tool that we have in our lives. So when we speak, when we think, we are invoking and utilizing nothing less than the power of the divine. So we might as well use it well. Next week, we continue with our series with the second agreement. Do you know what it is? OMG. Don't take anything personally. You're hurting my feelings. Don't take anything personally. But take this personally. I love you. And so